Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Nicholas Salome here at Wichita State University, a professor of physics in the Department of Mathematics, Statistics, and Physics. Today, in this podcast, I'm joined by a former student of mine and now a doctor, Austin Nelsen. Welcome.
Hi, happy to be here.
Dr. Nelsen is a 2019 graduate of Wichita State University with the Bachelor's of Science in Physics. But he also worked for my NASA group from fall of 2017 until the Landis or midsummer of 2019. So, Dr. Nelsen, tell us where you went and what you did after you graduated and left us.
Yeah, absolutely. So following my time at WSU, I moved out east to Kentucky. There I started grad school at the University of Kentucky, also in physics. Now I ultimately decided to go into experimental nuclear and particle physics after I did some calculations for an up-and-coming neutron lifetime experiment called BL3. But that eventually led me to the opportunity to help commission a neutron beta decay experiment, which we call NAB, and that's down at Oak Ridge National Lab. So I actually worked down there at Oak Ridge for the next few years. Then I wrote my dissertation on the topic of precision neutron beta decay experiments. And then as of now, I'm actually a postdoc for the University of Virginia, but I'm stationed out at Jefferson National Lab, all the way out in Virginia. So there I'm part of a new spin polarized fusion experiment that is eventually going to take place at the D3D tokamak research facility in San Diego here in a few years. So that's the rundown of where I went.
Yeah, well, that's exciting. You went really fast. You only graduated in 2019 and got your PhD by end of 2024. But now that you finished your PhD, would you do it again? What's your perspective of your time spent here at Wichita State to prepare you for it?
Well, I'll break that down a little bit. The whole idea of would I do that again? Well, that's hard to judge in hindsight, knowing the things that I know now. But the thing I look back to the most in particular with WSU is the philosophy of you get out what you put into it. And for me at the time, that meant gaining experience where I could. That included the classes I decided to take, the tutoring I provided in the physics help room, then of course the technical skills, things like computer programming, simulation work that I got from working with your group. And so that also gave me a great deal of confidence, my abilities as a young physicist, thanks in part to those opportunities that I had. So that's how I think back on my time at WSU. It kind of laid a nice groundwork for things.
Okay. Good to hear that. Now, I always tell good students who are majoring in any science that it's always great to get involved with research during your undergraduate career while doing your class studies as an undergraduate. What was your challenges to do both? Because I know you had spent a lot of work in my lab. I mean, I was paying you half time for a couple years there, and you were doing a lot of work, but you were also very busy with your classes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, making an appearance as well. All right. So one of the larger challenges I had at WSU, well, it is a smaller department, and so it did sometimes feel like my options were a little limited. And that goes for things like coursework as well as the research opportunities. Now, of course, that didn't make it impossible to get a good experience out of my schooling. But there were a few times that prospect felt a little daunting. But again, I think that does go back to the philosophy of you get out what you put into it, to take advantage of the opportunities that you do have.
Well, one thing we've implemented new here in our applied learning, that all students have to go through applied learning, is a first-year research experience. What would you think of that? I mean, it wasn't available while you were an undergraduate here, but we just started that, and we got money, $5 million a year to pay, first and second year students to get involved early. with research. And of course, there's some time commitment. Some students want to put lots of time, other students don't have much time. But what would you have thought of that?
That would have been very wonderful to have. One of the other challenges that I had, uh, especially early on in undergrad, is figuring out how to navigate all of this. You don't really know what you don't know, and I was brought up in a very small rural town, so there really wasn't much knowledge about how does one become a physicist, and uh, so to have that kind of structure and guidance early on would probably be a game changer. It would have been a game changer for me as well. The earlier you feel like you have structure in your education and where you're going, the more confidence that it generates, and I think ultimately the better you perform. So I would have certainly really enjoyed that. But you've mentioned the idea of time as well, and that feels like it gets to be even more and more of a problem even now than it was, when I was in undergrad, juggling everything from your other courses. Maybe you're another major, maybe you just have other extracurricular activities, or maybe you have to pay rent, and so having an outside job as well. Um, so maybe I'm getting a little ahead of myself here, but something that was nice about grad school for me was uh, being given or receiving assistance in paying my bills, through the form of a stipend. That allowed me to spend more time on school, the time that I needed to spend on that. That would have been very great to have in undergrad. So that I mean, I don't know whether or not, to what extent that is included in those studies, but I think that sounds like an amazing idea too. It certainly hits all the points that I struggled the most with when I was in
Yeah, it's a nice thing that the state of Kansas is funding us for our applied studies program of all majors and all students. Of course, it's also great to see the success you're having in physics, leaving us with a bachelor's, going on for a PhD, now getting a fairly prestigious postdoc at a DOE facility where you're stationed in a major university. But what's your
undergrad.
aspiration for the future? Are you aspiring to be a professor or a national lab or other lab scientist or industry PhD person? What would you think? And I know this is a few years down the road, but what's your aspiration?
That's a great question. The presumption that I've had the whole time while going through school was, I'd like to do research, or oh, I'd like to be a professor. Those all sound nice. But spending more time in academia, I've seen some of the both the ups and the downs of being in any of those positions, and so um, at the end of the day, for me, as long as I can be a scientist, work on projects that feel worthwhile to me, that feel like it's a part of a larger um, goal. That's the most important part to me. For now, I think that does mean continuing work as a researcher, uh, preferably at a national lab. Um, whether that be here in Newport News at Jefferson Lab, or uh, perhaps even back at Oak Ridge National Lab.
Mhm.
Um, Now, of course, eventually being a professor would, uh, that doesn't sound unappealing to me. I did enjoy teaching in grad school, and when I was tutoring in undergrad. So, the idea of teaching certainly sounds nice as well. So,
Great.
long story short, we'll see what opportunities come up, and then I'll decide from there.
Sure. You have to take it one year and then one appointment at a time. I
Hmm.
share the with our viewers this really great picture I found of you. You made a couple trips to NASA's Marshall Space Flight Center with my group. And here's a picture of you sitting in front of the Redstone rocket test facility of Von
Hmm.
Braun. and your fellow student, Mary Lynn, is standing next to you. So I think this is a really nice picture of you. And historically, we still have great fond memories of all your efforts on our group. I wish you the very best in all these endeavors and your success, and of course, ask you to keep in touch with your alma mater here at Wichita State University. So,
Yeah,
thank you for
absolutely.
this time, and we will do this again with another podcast with another student as we hear about their successes. So, everyone,
Excellent.
thanks for listening.